And so I think it's taught me time and time again that if we're willing to put ourselves out there, God will show up. And if we listen to that, he'll let us know who we need to serve in that moment.
You know that feeling when you want to help, want to serve, want to create a peaceful home, but you're just not sure how. Or maybe you're so busy keeping up that pouring into others feels impossible. That's exactly why I sat down with Brittney Hanks of Home and Kind. Because if you've ever wondered how to create a home where kindness thrives, where service isn't a burden but a natural extension of who you are in the right place. In this episode, we're breaking it down. How to show up, how to help in ways that actually make an impact, how confidence in yourself creates peace in your home, and most importantly, why small, simple acts of service matter more than you think. If you want a home that feels good to be in, if you want to make serving others a seamless part of your life, this conversation is for you. Let's dive in. Brittney, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So happy to have you on. You are someone that I have loved from afar and followed online and got so many great ideas from. Brittney runs the best Instagram called Home and Kind, and she's both of those things. She teaches you the best way to run a home and really just how to show up with kindness. And I'm excited for this conversation. We said this offline before, but you're so professional in what you do, and you are so open and authentic and vulnerable, but at the same time, you really hold boundaries. And to get to ask you questions and just have a conversation with you is a real pleasure and a treat today. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited. It is an interesting world to be in because I show up every day online. And so people feel like they know me, but I'm actually sharing very little of my personal life, very little about my past. So I'm actually very excited to just kind of, talk more about that. And I'm usually sharing content or ideas and less about like my family or what I'm doing. So this is a fun opportunity to do that.
So good. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what makes you you?
Oh, what makes me me? Well, I am someone who actually loves and I embrace change. When I was growing up, I moved 15 times by the time I was 15 years old. So every single year almost, I was moving. We were in a different place, in a different school. And although that was like super hard at times, and I feel like I was always like the new kid, always the loner, I feel like it really made me super resilient and it made me excited to try new things. It made me excited to explore new places. So I haven't done a ton of that actually. As I've been married, we've only lived in 3 places. We live in North Carolina now. We've been here for almost 6 years. And then we were in Dallas, Texas for 9 years before that. And then Utah for a couple of years before that. But I feel like that part of my childhood of just moving around so much and being in so many different places and getting to know so many different people just made me really embrace things that were different and embrace change. And so I've also always loved, my dad's an entrepreneur. My father-in-law is an entrepreneur. So ever since I was little, like my sister and I were doing summer camps, we were coming up with little businesses to do. And I've kind of just done that my whole life. And even once I got married and started having kids, I actually started a swimsuit business that I had for 6 or 7 years, where I was like actually sewing swimsuits myself in our basement apartment. And I loved the business side of that. I wasn't super enthusiastic about being in like the swimsuit industry. So once I decided to move on from that is when I kind of got into what I'm doing now. Although it started as more of like a product-based business, I was doing holiday pillowcases for a while, birthday plates, and some different kind of like holiday products, and then slowly started sharing more content online as part of that business. And over time, that's just kind of morphed into sharing more ideas, sharing recipes, sharing things for families to do, stuff to do with your kids. And now I've done a few cookbooks. And so my vision has changed a lot over the years, but I think at the end of the day, I'm so happy with where we're at now. And in fact, my husband just joined the business to do this with me full time, which is really exciting. But I love it because it feels very family focused, which is one of my passions in life. And I have 4 kids who are growing up too fast. My oldest just turned 17, and my youngest is 10. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Well, congrats that you have built your business to support your whole family and have your husband join. What a big deal. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And I love the backstory of the entrepreneurism. I have that in me as well. I always have another new idea and I just have to rein them all back. And it's fun though, if you know that you
Yeah.
love that and get to live that way too.
Yeah, it is.
So you jumped onto the online world what year about?
I started the business. Well, when I first started the business, it was about 8 years ago. I did not want to be the face of the business. I wanted to just share my products. I wanted other people to share my products. I was very hesitant to um, be online, to be like talking into my phone. I felt really weird. It felt awkward. So I was very hesitant to do that in the beginning. And so it took me a little while to get used to that. In the beginning, I was just very uncomfortable with it. But slowly I realized, actually, this is like pretty awesome. I do like this. It's fun to create content and share ideas. So I don't feel like I ever would have started a business to just do that. I think having the product based business is the only way that I really would have gotten into it. So, probably for the past maybe 4 or 5 years of the 8, I've been like a big part of it and, the face of the business and sharing ideas, sharing content, creating content. So it's been probably 4 or 5 years of doing more of that.
How did you convince yourself to be the face? How was that in the transition time and how did you get through that?
It was a little tricky at first, just because I don't know there. And at the time, like influencer wasn't really a thing, but it was a little bit. But it was mostly like lifestyle influencers, and I didn't really want to be that. And so there just wasn't a lot of people doing what I kind of started doing or wanted to do in the beginning. And so it took little bits and pieces of sharing stuff and just getting awkward and doing it anyway, but realizing that that's what people were connecting with. And the more and more I started doing it, I mean, it's like anything with practice, you get better. You get more comfortable doing it, you get better at it. And in fact, I'll never forget this little piece of advice from my friend Jamie Cook, who got her degree in journalism. And so she knew like how to be in front of a camera. And she sent me a message when I was just starting out of like kind of being the face of the brand. And she said, I love what you are sharing so much. Um, if I could just, she's like, I went into journalism. I've done, on camera media before. And can I just tell you one little thing, totally take it or leave it, but you need to smile more. You need to be happy, happier, more enthusiastic, a little more energetic when you're online sharing. And I was so grateful that she took the time to tell me that. I was not offended at all. I just was kind of jumping on and talking as if you would talk day to day to a friend. But I realized when you're on camera, you just have to have a little bit higher of an energy. And I feel like that helped me a ton. And I was so grateful. She could have totally been like, she might take this in the wrong way. I'm not going to give her that feedback. But I was so grateful that she did because I feel like it gave me the confidence to start doing that, to like be a little higher energy, to smile a little bit more. And I feel like it helped a lot. And even looking back at some of the videos that I posted at the very beginning, I was like, oh, I looked like I was so like sad or like unenthusiastic about what I was sharing. So I feel like learning from other people and even getting some of that feedback in the beginning helped me make it better. And then just slowly, gave me more confidence to show up. And now it just kind of feels like second nature because I've been doing it for so long.
So cool that you took that advice without feeling insecure about it. And also so cool. I love Jamie so much and awesome that she was willing to just give some advice. I think as women,
Yeah,
that's scary, both to take it and to give it. And
totally.
big for both of you. I love that. Okay, so
Yeah.
you've been online.
Yeah.
Again, you share so many great tips and tricks and ideas that feel like anybody can do. Like nothing feels overwhelming, which takes a real skill, I think, because I think we all have so much on our plates that it's like, wow, I could do that. Actually, that's a life hack that would make my life so much better. And it's not really that difficult. Do you always think in systems ways? Is that just kind of how your mind works or has that you developed that?
I do. I feel like my mom is like the organization queen and she had 7 kids. I'm one of 7 kids. And so my dad traveled a lot when I was younger. And so she just had to, like, in order to make her life function, she had to create systems and she was so organized. So I do feel like I learned a lot of that from her. Um, Also, it's been interesting to share content online because I'm actually someone behind the scenes who, like, I love making really complicated recipes sometimes. Like, I love diving in and like taking a couple hours to make something. But I have realized that my audience, the people that I'm sharing content to, they need really practical, quick and easy ideas. So that's the type of content that I share. And that is also helpful for me too. I mean, I'm a mom of 4 kids, so I don't have time to be like making 5-hour dinners every day. Typically, I just need something quick and easy. Um, so I feel like I do have other hobbies that, on the side, maybe I love doing like a very complicated cake recipe with all these different layers and all these different um, steps. But the stuff I share online is like super practical. In the beginning, it almost felt so easy. It was like dumb to share. Even in my cookbooks, I'm like, can I even call this a cookbook? It's basically putting 5 ingredients together to create, a dinner. But I realized that's what moms need so often. There's so many complicated recipes and things, complicated things out there. You get ideas on Pinterest, but it ends up not being as easy as you think it will. And I feel like because of so much that's going on in a mom's mind at any given moment of the day, anything that can take off some of that mental load to just say, hey, you need a quick and easy dinner, go to Trader Joe's and grab these 4 things. And this will be a super family friendly, easy thing that you can put on the table in under 30 minutes. So I feel like a lot of it is just creating things and sharing things that are almost so easy. They don't feel like it's worth sharing, but like those are the things that moms need.
Totally. We actually had Michelle Gifford on last week. We'll be releasing that episode
Love
soon.
Michelle.
She's so great.
Oh,
And
fun.
we were talking about starting out in business and what would the first piece of advice you would give. And she said, people aren't going to like this, but I would say go where the money is. And we kind of laughed about it. And I've actually been thinking about that for a week as not just advice as you're starting in a company, but also as a mentor, as you're thinking about, or if you're
Yeah.
sharing online, or if you have expertise in a place where the money is usually you've learned so much as a mom. You have 4 kids. You've now gone up the mountain so far. And sometimes I think those of us who've traveled a little ways look up and just see how much more we want to go. But when you look back and realize
Mm-hmm.
the woman coming behind me, where the money is actually in those first steps that are maybe the most
Yeah.
intimidating, because getting started is way harder
Mm-hmm.
than continuing with momentum. And so that's a great life hack, like as you're helping women or even your kids, where the money is, where you need to start, where people are the most hungry often, is in those first few steps and in the simplest things, and getting it to a place where someone else can take it and run with it. I think there's actually a brilliance to that a lot of women are hungry for.
Yeah,
And so I love that. It's a
for
really
sure.
good piece of advice, and also I think counterintuitive to a lot of us who want to do good or help people.
Yeah. Yeah. We overcomplicate it or overthink it sometimes, and we don't have to.
Yep. One of the things that you do really well that I love, that I actually thought about doing a series on years ago, and then I saw you creating some content around it, and I was like, hallelujah, everybody needs this. Or, well, I need this, I know, is how do we just pitch in and help? Like, how do we show up for other people? And something as simple as, how do we take a meal to a neighbor? And what's an uncomplicated meal to take that doesn't require so many dishes and them returning things? And maybe I could even double it up and do it for my family. And was there a backstory to that, to you wanting to show up? I mean, you've done this with teacher gifts, you've done this with meals for neighbors. Was there something that
Yeah.
made you want to do that, brought you to that?
Yeah, I think it kind of started. I mean, I have several family members who are like really great, thoughtful gift givers. And it's like, I'll be talking about something one time, and it's like 6 months later, they've remembered that I talked about that thing and they'll give me something related to that. And it's just so meaningful and like, oh man, I feel so cared for. And like they remembered that one thing I talked about. Um, but I love cooking. I love cooking for other people. And I think what kind of started me on this journey was probably, gosh, now it's probably like 8 or 9 years ago when we lived in Texas. It was a new year, and I was trying to think of like a goal that I could set. And so I just thought, I'm going to try to take a meal to someone every month for the year. And so I set this goal. as many of us are, I'm not great at like setting a goal and keeping it, but I was really dedicated to that. And I felt like it was a goal that was not too crazy. It was just once a month. It wasn't every single week. And so what I found myself doing most often is like when I was making a pot of soup or something, I would just double the recipe. And then as I was making that meal, I usually didn't have anyone in mind already that I wanted to take it to because it was often last minute. Like I hadn't planned it. I hadn't scheduled with someone in advance, like, oh, you have this going on. Let me bring you a meal next week. It was usually as I was making the meal and realizing, oh, I have enough ingredients to double this and take it to someone else. And I would just, as I was making the meal, I would pray and I would just pray, who needs this meal? Heavenly Father, who needs it? It's already 4:30 p.m. And so it's close to dinner time. Just put a name on my heart of someone who could use this meal. And I'll never forget because I had to learn this lesson the hard way that I was making a big pot of chili once and I had this neighbor's name come into my mind as I was making this chili. You need to take this to Jenny. And I had already dropped off something at her house the week before. And so I thought, this is weird. Like, I already dropped something off. I'm sure she doesn't need it. It feels like this is too much too soon. And so I didn't do it. I didn't listen. I just had the chili for our family. And then we had a church activity that night. And so we were meeting at somebody's house. We came, there was like a speaker. My friend Jenny showed up to the event probably 15 minutes late and she had a bag of Wendy's in her hand. And she was just like, I'm so sorry. Like I was running behind. I had so many things to do. And then I realized I hadn't eaten. So I had to just grab something really quick. And then I'm here and like my heart just sunk. And I thought, I was supposed to bring you dinner. And I had that name placed on my heart and I didn't do anything about it. And so I went up to her after and I told her what had happened. And she was like, oh my goodness, no, it's fine, But I went home and I packed up the extra chili that I had and I took it to her house and I said, I should have listened. I should have had this for you. But I didn't. And I learned from that lesson that I thought, okay, from now on, when I do this, when I prepare a meal and a name comes into my mind and onto my heart, I'm going to listen to it, even if it feels awkward, even if it feels like, gosh, I don't think this person's going to need it. And so for the rest of that year, I tried to do that. And some really cool experiences came out of that. And it usually was someone who had something come up last minute and they weren't able to have dinner, or we were able to invite someone over to eat the dinner with us. And I think I just learned that if I put myself out there and if I prepare something with the intent to serve someone, with that meal or whatever it is, that God will show up and show me who that's meant for. So I've tried to do that and I still do that sometimes. If I'm making a meal and I know I can make extra, I will pray about who needs that meal. And in fact, it happened just a few months ago where the name that came into my mind was someone in my neighborhood, a friend who is like literally the best cook and baker I've ever met. She's done catering businesses. She like makes homemade macaroons. Like she's just this incredible trained, she's probably a trained chef. I don't know. That's how good she is. And so when her name came into my heart, I just was like, oh my goodness, no. Like this is such a simple soup that I made. Like there's no way she needs food. But I was like, nope, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take it over. And so I went over to her house with this soup and some bread. And when she opened the door, her house smelled like burned popcorn. And she was like, my child just burned popcorn earlier this afternoon. It's been giving me the worst headache. I can't even go into the kitchen because it smells so bad. And that smell just, permeates everything. And so she was like, I'm so grateful for this because I was just not in the zone to be able to cook anything. And so I think it's taught me time and time again that if we're willing to put ourselves out there, God will show up. And if we listen to that, he'll let us know who we need to serve in that moment.
Oh, so good. And there's so many little micro principles embedded in this, like that whole experience, that I'm just like, this is how we work with God. This is how we do life. Everything that you just said. And it's setting a goal, something that's doable and reasonable, but pushes us, that's focused on other people. And it's taking what we have and just doubling what we're making for ourselves, showing up in a way that already serves our family or is something we already are good enough at that we can offer it to other people, making what we have enough, and then just asking God. And then I also love that the first time is a failure, because I think God gives us practice rounds and practice runs because he knows it's not
Yeah.
comfortable probably. And he knows that our hearts are good, but
Mm-hmm.
it feels weird and we don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable. And so he lets us make small mistakes, I think, so that then we get it and we understand how it really happens. And then just the reminder that no matter what your gift is, there might be people who are better at it and they still need you. Even if they're a chef, they still need a
Yeah.
meal once in a while as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many good things in that story that whatever your thing is, you listening in, and it may not be cooking and may not be a meal, but however you show up and what you're doing in your life right now, we know how much we need people at different times in our lives. And certainly other people need people too. We just do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was
And
good.
I think sometimes what I've noticed is, like my friend who's this like amazing cook, amazing chef, um, people aren't thinking of her as someone who may need a meal, and it's like the people who are always serving others that I think sometimes get overlooked. So those are sometimes the people that I'm like, okay, I'm going to go take something to this person because they're always first to sign up to help someone else. And those people need to feel the love too, and not that you should neglect everyone else, and but it's been a sweet thing to kind of look outside the box of like who we would typically serve. Of course, like, a new mom, but I've even talked to moms who have had their fourth or fifth child and they're like, I didn't get any meals. And I think it's just because people thought she's a professional mom by now. She doesn't need it. Maybe she has family coming in town. So that's one thing that I would encourage people to do as well is like kind of look outside the box of the people who you would typically think to serve and look at the people who are often the ones serving others and serve them, because they're not going to be expecting it. And I think it just is a way to show them that God is aware of them too.
I think showing up in that way, just asking God, looking outside the box, the real unexpected gift that usually happens to me is that I get to see God's real over and over again. Because you just can't make
Yeah.
it up. When those coincidences happen that
Hmm.
there's the burning popcorn or you see her with a Wendy's bag, you're like, okay, someone tell me how to explain this otherwise. If there isn't God, then how did this just happen that this person's in my mind? And he does that over and over. And it's like
Yeah.
the unexpected blessing of being someone who serves is that you get to be reminded that he's real and he notices that when we struggle, even when we just didn't have dinner and we were going to grab Wendy's, it feels like a small thing, but the small things add up in those big moments to say, no, but I remember he had me in the thing that wasn't even as important as this big one. And you get to be the recipient of
Yeah.
that as the giver as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I love what you said too about, even if you fail and even if he's trying to work through you and you don't pull through that time, he's going to give you more opportunities. And that's what I'm so appreciative for as well. That like even the times when I could have been, serving someone else, but I either chose not to or I felt awkward, so I didn't say anything. He doesn't give up on us, after once or twice or 10 times. He just keeps nudging, and then at whatever point you decide to follow through on it, and I think he works through other people as well. It's like if I don't follow through on something, hopefully someone else gets inspired to help those people and step in. But what a gift that it's not, we're not failures if we don't listen the first time. He keeps on giving us chances to step up and follow that inspiration.
I love the scripture that says he makes beauty from ashes. And I've said this before that I just give
Hmm.
him so many ashes and say, what are you going to do with this? Oh,
And somehow it
somehow.
works.
Well, I'd love to jump in for those listening. You have so many great tips and ideas. Do you mind sharing some live with us right now and what you've learned in taking meals or in gifts, anything like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, a meal is always amazing. Like, cooking dinner is a pain point for moms, even when life is not crazy and you're not going through a particular hardship. But especially when things come up, it's like that's the first thing to go. And of course, you can go pick up food, but Having something that someone's made for you is just such a great way to serve people. And so giving people a meal, I always like to, whatever I'm making for my family, just double that. You don't have to make anything fancy. You don't have to, go out of your way to like try all these new recipes. I like to keep it super simple. I like to deliver it in disposable containers. I don't want them to have to return anything. And that's one thing too that I think has helped me be able to do this more often is I just have a bunch of like disposable food containers that I keep on hand all the time so that at any point, if I'm making extra food or I need to quickly put a meal together for someone, I'm not rushing to figure out, okay, what do I put this in? So just keeping some of those like gifting essentials on hand so that at any time I can throw together a meal. So a meal is always amazing. But one of my favorite things actually to give people, because I feel like meal is a dinner is always like the first thing people think of, which is amazing. But one of my favorite things to gift for a new mom or I have a good friend that just lost her stepdad unexpectedly passed away, and so she was gone from her family for 9 days. And I just made some muffins, cut up a bunch of fruit and vegetables, made some protein balls, and I took that over to her. And she was so grateful because she's like, I haven't had a chance to go to the grocery store. Oftentimes, even when people are bringing you dinners, sometimes it's kind of like heavy and, comfort food. So it's so nice to have like freshly chopped and ready to eat fruits and vegetables. So that's one of my favorite things to take to people. And you can just take it and drop it off. You don't need to coordinate with them. Like, oh, do you have someone bringing you dinner tonight? Like, just pack up some snacks. And whether you want to cook, bake muffins or not, like literally even just chopping up some vegetables and some fruit, putting those into some containers is like such a nice thing for people to receive and such a thoughtful thing. And you don't have to schedule anything for that. It's just something they can snack on throughout the day. And you can literally, drop it off to them, whether you've, planned in advance to do that or not. So I love taking like snacks or breakfast foods to people when they're going through hardship. And another thing I love to do is I always try to include my kids when I'm doing this. And sometimes they're in a bad mood when we leave. They're like, "Oh, I have to go with you again. Like I have to carry this food and drop it off." But then it's so neat when they see the person that we're gifting it to and when they see what a difference that made in their lives. And I feel like that's such an important thing to teach our kids. Like that is, if I can teach my kids one thing, I really want them to learn how to serve other people. I feel like that is like the opposite of entitlement. And with kids that I feel like, are not hungry, have a roof over their heads, and live in a place where they could tend to feel entitled about things, I feel like giving them the opportunity to serve and be a part of even just small acts of service really allows them to kind of like get outside their little world of, oh, everything's about me. So that's one thing that I always try to do, whether they've helped make the meal, cut up the fruits or vegetables or not. I always at least have them come and deliver it with me so that they can see how meaningful that is for the recipient.
Brilliant. I love this idea so much. You made me think of a time when I was in the hospital for a couple months when I was pregnant with twins about 10 years ago. And obviously I was eating hospital food. And so I had meals actually every single day. And the quality was surprisingly not as bad as you'd think. I was at Yale Hospital out in Connecticut, and it was honestly better than I had expected. And they had lots of options and I could switch things up. And I had one sweet friend, Annie, who brought me the most beautiful trio of kind of more snacks just like that. She had this kale salad and she had a homemade hummus that she made with veggies. And like, it almost makes me cry now thinking of it. And it's brilliant because it's, like you said, you can drop it off anytime. You don't even need the coordination. You don't have to try to work through all the logistics of it. But it's also something that gets you through a whole day. And I think for women, when you're going through something, at the meal times is when other people are around. You have your kids or your husband. But if you're going through grief or loneliness or I don't know how to feed this brand new baby, I've never nursed before, I don't know what I'm doing, the snacks are actually the in-between times that the emotion comes out, and to have something there that just represents someone loves me, someone's thinking of me. Maybe I could even reach out to her with this question that I have. I've never thought about bringing snacks. I actually saw this on your Instagram and was like, brilliant, but I hadn't thought about it till you said it again. And this is going to be my new thing. Like the things for the women in the in-between times when we need to know that we're loved
Yeah.
and we're taken care of. And then of course, bringing your kids is just such a beautiful, all of us probably have, well, a lot of us probably have stories of Christmas time and visiting that widow or that older couple, and you're groaning and you're like, why do we have to do this? It's Christmas. And what an impact that makes on your heart. But to have that touch point often changes us.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even if you are not someone who loves cooking or not someone who feels like you're a good baker or is comfortable making a whole meal, snacks is also a lot less intimidating than, putting together stuff even that you just store bought and just getting some fresh things to put together. Um, is a lot less intimidating for most people than making a whole meal and wondering, are they going to like this? What are their preferences? So I think it takes the guesswork out of it and seems a little less intimidating. But I think even if you don't want to gift food, there are certainly other things you can gift to people. I had a friend who was having a surgery and she was going to be basically bedridden for a couple weeks. So I just took her like some adult coloring books and some fun markers and a few treats. And again, like even more than the gift, it's that you're thinking about that person. And that, like you said, like when they see that either that food item or the thing you gifted them, hopefully that's a reminder to them throughout the day that they have someone who loves them, that you put forth, that somebody put forth some effort and was thinking about them and, praying for them and caring for them. I even heard an idea recently, this was so sweet, that someone was sharing with me that she had a member of the family pass away and they had to kind of quickly rush to get on a flight. She had a couple young kids. And so she only had like a day to kind of get packed up and prepare. And she had a sweet friend come over and just bring these like airplane activity bags for her kids. That this friend just went to the store and got like a couple, activity books and put a few treats in there for her little kids to take on the airplane. And I'm like, that is genius. I never would have thought of that. So I think thinking outside the box, particularly if you're not comfortable giving food, there's so many little things that, just taking a moment to think about, even like what would be helpful to me if I was in their shoes, kind of putting yourself in their shoes to think, what's something that I could gift that's a little bit outside the box that really might be helpful for this person. But I just thought that was so sweet. Like I never would have thought airplane activities. Yes, that's so, and it just made such a huge impact on her. And again, more so because of the thought that went behind it. And I'm sure the activities and stuff were really helpful on the airplane, but just, thinking about someone and doing something about it can impact people for life, even with your friend who was thinking of you, like that still is a tender memory that you can bring up and you just hopefully have so much like love associated with that.
We had Katie Hughes on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and she's just lovely. And she has a similar
Love her. Yeah.
vibe to you for me that just like, it's just so much love and loveliness. And we talked about how these things that we do and that we make are just symbols, like these living symbols of our love. And really, whatever this vessel is that we put our love into is really less important than the fact that we pour our love into it. And that is the thing that we're giving. And I love that, asking the question, okay, what would I need in this situation? And then really, it doesn't matter if I show up and I poured love into something that gives them an opportunity to feel it. And that's all that really matters.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So any other tips you can share about filling your home? I know this isn't just what you talk about, kindness in your home, but filling your home with that kind of love, because truly, and all your ideas you share really are so practical. Like, here's the best this and an idea for lunches and great jeans and whatever. But what you do, there's a light that shines in that content that's unique, that just feels like you don't need to compare yourself and there's not a judgment here. And it's not about having this perfect home. It's really about having a home full and filled with light and with joy and with goodness. What other tips would you share those listening in to create that kind of a home?
That's a good question, because all of a sudden I'm thinking about all the times when kids are arguing and fighting and wrestling, and that just happens. Like my home is far from free of that, like we have our fair share of sibling bickering and all of the things. But I do think, I think creating that kind of a home and that kind of a feeling really starts with yourself and starts with you taking time to build up your own confidence, to have that inner confidence that you and everyone in your home are children of God. Because I think, and I've noticed about myself, when I feel confident in who I am and in the efforts that I'm putting in and I'm focusing on the right things, I show up better for everyone in my life. Whereas if I'm kind of in a phase of comparison, or I've just, spend hours scrolling and it's just been a huge waste of time, or I just am grumpy for whatever reason, I get hangry. No one likes that. So I need to make sure I'm fueled and like I'm taking care of my body. And so I think it really starts with those things, like making sure I'm coming into my home and into my relationships as, a whole happy person. And of course, like we all have our ups and downs. And I think it's good to be and feel those feelings. But having that for yourself, I think, has a trickle down effect, and it affects everyone in the family. And the attitude that you bring to different things, like when I'm, upset and on edge, everyone in the house feels it, and it affects everyone. And so if I can be in a good place of confidence and showing up in love, then that affects everyone as well. And I think that's the beautiful thing about mothers, is like their energy affects everyone in the house, and can have such a positive effect to, even with crazy, moody teenagers. I feel like my teenagers will be high and they'll be low and they're all over the map. But if I just try to keep this kind of like even kill, I don't let myself get wrapped up into the drama of it, I don't go high and low with them, I just stay steady and consistent, then I feel like they are much quicker to come down and be back more, level-headed with everyone else. So I think that's a big part of it, is just like making sure you're taking the time to fill your own cup, and then you have that energy to give to others. But I think also, kind of like I talked about, including kids in service, um, I try to make sure my kids know what things I'm doing for myself, that are important to me and that I take time to do. I remember, our friend Melanie Burke always talked about how she liked to just keep her scriptures open, like out on the kitchen table, out on a coffee table. And not only so she could just like jump into them at any time, but so her kids could see her reading the scriptures, and that just in the middle of the day, I remember she showed a picture once of like, she's lying on the ground reading her scriptures. Her kids are like on her back and they're all over. But one of her kids had snapped that picture of her just, laying on the ground reading her scriptures. And I think what a beautiful thing that her kids are seeing her do that. And so, my kids are in school all day, but I want them to see me reading the scriptures. I want them to see me serving other people. So even though it may be easier to do some of those things when they're gone and when they're at school, I try to either make an effort to, include them in those things, or talk to them about those things. Be like, hey, I was reading the scriptures today. I was listening to this really great talk, and here's what I learned from it. Because I don't want to do those things separate from them. I want them to know that those things are important to me, and that those are the things that bring joy in my life, so that they can decide if they, if they're having a hard time, maybe they can think, I remember my mom always did this, or when she would take me to go drop a meal off for someone, it made me feel good. And hopefully they can kind of turn to those things as they grow up and just need some practical ideas for how to bring a little bit more joy into their life.
I'm getting this picture in my mind. I'm not sure why. Of right when you said being a mother and having this stability and having this place for them, I'm like literally picturing Mother Earth, where we come as these mothers and create a place. And I know in our faith we use the word nurturing a lot, that the role of mothers is to nurture children. But to keep this ground stable for them, that as they're planting seeds and as they're thinking through things, there's a stable place for them to grow, which of course, like, it's going to get messed up and animals are going to step in it. And like, that's just normal. We're humans. We shouldn't expect it to be without any outside forces. But then also that the water that we're pouring on ourselves, like, pour that on them too. That shouldn't just happen
Yeah.
outside. Like, let all these things that you use to nurture yourselves be things that you use to nurture your children, because that's what will make them happy. And maybe again, like just doubling the pot of soup that you're making for a neighbor. Same thing with your children. Like, as I'm doing it, talk about it. as I'm in a verse of scripture or
Yeah.
pondering something or struggling with something, share how really Jesus got you through that thing and what that looked like practically. I think of these in
Yeah.
like the awesome opportunity I have to interview all these amazing women for the podcast. And I think, man, women have the opportunity, every woman has the opportunity to tell these stories to their own children and to be the ones to say proactively, like just in everyday conversation, these are the things that are working for me, or, oh, here's an idea because I did this too. And just to share more, water more, plant more sun, but you are that stable ground.
Oh, thanks. I try to be.
We all know what happens behind the scenes and it's not always perfect for any of us, but you can feel that you're doing such a
Yeah.
good job. Well, I'm sad. This time has flown by. I'd love to just end with one question that I like to ask guests when I remember. And that is, what do you hope your legacy is that you leave to those online or to your children?
That's a great question. I hope that part of my legacy is showing people that they are very capable, and also that they are loved and just worth so much. I think we kind of talked a little bit about, confidence and building up your own confidence. That is one gift that if I could give my kids anything, I would want them to be confident in who they are, because I think that's so important to have that inner confidence that then gives you the bandwidth to go out and serve other people. And that, brings you more joy and helps you feel connected to your family and to your friends and even strangers. And just as this family of God's children, I think, we're meant to do it together. And you have more energy for that when you're not so consumed with all the things you're lacking in. So I think I would hope that part of my legacy would be helping people build up that confidence in themselves and knowing how much worth they have and how capable they are of just doing amazing things, and that everyone has so many gifts and talents and varied gifts and talents, and leaning into whatever theirs are. And I hope my kids do that too, and they're all so different from each other. And I am strong in some areas and I'm very weak in others. And I'm so grateful for the people that are strong in the areas that I'm weak in. And I think we're all meant together to just lean into our strengths, and how many, what amazing things can happen if we all do that and just share our gifts with those around us.
So beautiful. And thank you for sharing that with so many of us and making us more confident, more capable, more able to show up and to serve and to give and to love. And you do that in such a just humble and confident way. And that shines through. And talking to you today, I'm like, oh, that's why, because that's who she is.
Well, thanks. You're sweet. I feel like you're the same, and I've learned so much from you, and your confidence shines and gives other people confidence. I see some of the things that you do and I'm like, she has no fear. This girl could do anything. She will conquer the world. You have done so many different things and I have loved to just see it all. So that gives me confidence too, that I'm like, okay, if Lizzy can go start something new, I can do something new too.
You are kind. And we both know that it takes the hours crying in the morning to show up with confidence in the afternoon. So it's a journey for
Yep.
sure. Oh, well, thank you for joining me today and for all of this and just who you are. It was such a pleasure.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It was so fun.
If this episode hit home for you, literally, come join the conversation over on Instagram at Lean In With Lizzy. I'd love to hear, what's one small way you bring kindness and service into your home? Tag me, share your thoughts, and let's keep this going. Because the way we show up in our homes, it changes everything.